of 7 people, 8 people.
Nuh-uh.
Hey, family.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, they're right. Oh, no, we've been on for 10 seconds. Never mind. I was like, what? Hey, we're going to give a couple minutes for people to join in. Can you scoot over a little bit?
No.
Thanks.
Are you going to get closer to the camera so
No,
the
I look
right
a
side?
mess. No, this is how I'm saying.
All right. So tell us that you're watching. That way we know what's working here.
Yeah,
Are you going to drink that the
I
whole
might.
time?
Y'all, I'm sorry. I don't feel well. And so she
Oh.
just has to deal with me.
Okay. Oh, I see now. There's 8 people watching.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So somebody make a comment so we can know if this is working.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Yay. There it works. Okay.
Oh, okay. Hey,
So-
Vanessa.
So then I can go like this, and then it says it right there.
All right. Awesome. We also have new technology. So there we go.
Okay. We're in
All right.
business. All right.
So, sorry. I called an emergency family meeting because we were.
Hold on. You look like a Muppet. All right.
I feel like a Muppet. We received information from Biola on their Instagram story today, and it's about an art display that's happening. I believe it's happening currently. It could have been an older, picture that was just posted on their story today. I'm not exactly sure, but it is Biola's artwork, and the title of the page is actually Biola Art. And
account, yeah, is the
Biola.
So it's an official Biola entity, and kind of the big picture here, just to set the stage, is we've had a lot of ongoing conversations about what's happening in, and we did a podcast a few weeks ago about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We did another podcast about the intercultural something or other development assessment thingamajig. And we did a podcast last fall with our friend Dr. Corey Miller about critical social theories coming into Christian colleges. I'm a little bit encouraged that more and more people are starting to notice this and speak up about it. And we're just wanting to continue to highlight examples. Now, again, our purpose is not to necessarily isolate Biola. It's just that this is the school that we have the most touch points with. It's the school where we have the most context, and we've had the most meetings with people who are in influential positions. And we haven't had those meetings at as many other schools. So that's why we're focusing on Biola. It's a test case. It's an example. It's not this isn't intended to simply say this is only happening at Biola.
No, this is happening in many Christian universities across the country.
Yeah. So our point here is to say, look, if it can happen at a school that is historically conservative like Biola, you need to be on the lookout for this. Okay. And so one of the tips that Joy gave a few weeks ago on the podcast, she's an associate dean at a major Christian university. One of the tips that she gave was following social media accounts for the school.
Yeah. And this is a good example of why you should follow social media posts or social media accounts at a school that you may be looking at, or your young person may be looking at,
or is attending.
Yeah. Because 9 times out of 10, they're going to post something that will tip you off to, oh, they may be leaning more this way than that way. Another thing too is that if they don't allow any social media posts to be shared, well, ask other questions. Why don't you have anything up that can be shared?
So what we're talking about tonight is a art display that was on campus last night. And it was one of the Biola parents is checking in here, letting us know that it was on display last night. And so we saw today on the public Instagram account for the Biola University Art Department, and I'm just going to put these up here. Now, this has been removed. I did screen caps earlier in the afternoon, and then when Monique went to check the account a couple hours later, they had been removed, but I had taken the screen caps. of what it was.
Because they
up
will
there.
always accuse you of being wrong. They will always accuse you of not having the proof, not having the receipts. You misinterpreted. No, actually, let's talk about what's really there, what's in the open for everyone to see. This isn't about my misinterpretation. This isn't about a skewed vision
or
or
a
something like
private
that.
communication. This was on the public Instagram account. So we're going to take a look at this here. And this was the first screen. Hopefully you can see that. And it is an image of what appears to be a crucifix and somebody with a mask. Now, notice the caption down here is powerful guest artist work that was exhibited at the AAPI night market.
Let me close the door.
And so this was an event sponsored by the art department. And it was, they had a guest artist come and he brought some of his art to display. And it was a big student event on campus last night. So this is the first kind of frame in the display. And now I'm going to show you the second frame. It says, I am with you. So it looks like what appears to be like a beggar or a homeless person.
But he has a crown of thorns on his head. So that makes me wonder, is it Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have
or a representation of a Christ-like figure, I would say.
And then we have this image is the fourth side. It was like a cube. And so we have some chains here, but then we see blood coming out of the palms. So sort of, again, bringing us back to a Christ-like figure. And then the final side of the cube was this lotus flower, which is a frequent symbol for Asian culture. And it says, Stop Asian Hate. And then it gives the Instagram account of the artist.
And the lotus flowers being held in hands that are, again, having blood dripping from the palms.
Yeah. And so you can see right at the top here, this is on the public Biola page. And so I want you to know that we got this from that.
It's not a Photoshop. We didn't enter it in after.
Oh, they only saw the first
okay,
side.
Hold on.
All right, hold on.
Sorry, guys.
We're learning here.
Yeah, so go to the Chrome tab.
All right. So
that's the second one.
I'm going to share it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second one. And
then you have to go back to the other, go back to this tab over here. And then you're going to have to do it again.
Okay. I'm learning. All right.
Sorry, guys. We didn't see that comment.
Yeah. So this is the third one of the hands. And you can see the chains. You can see the blood coming out of the hands. Hopefully you can see that. And then finally, the fourth one is this one.
I don't think they saw the one. Did you show the one with the beggar?
Yeah.
And the crown of thorns?
Yeah. And this one is the one that says Stop Asian Hate with the lotus flower and then the blood dripping from the hands. And then this again is the Instagram account for the artist. So again, this is all public. It was there on the Biola Art feed story earlier this afternoon. So, okay, I think they saw them all.
Okay.
So,
and if you didn't catch one, they are, I posted the pics on the post where I said we were going to be going live.
Yeah. So, hey, Evelyn. So here is I'm going to put up the post from the artist because we want to be fair because in our view, meaning comes from the author.
Mm-hmm.
The authorial intent is what determines the meaning of a text. So whether that's the Bible or whether that's an art piece, we want to be careful. So the first question we want to think about is, well, okay, a piece of art is designed to invite me into a question. Mm-hmm. It's usually inviting me into a conversation to think about something provocative and to think about maybe something from a different point of view. And that's part of what art does. And I think that that can be helpful sometimes. Art is important, and it is an expression of various cultures. And so that is, we don't want to rush into a hasty conclusion. We want to gather evidence, because that's what Christians ought to do. We don't jump into a conclusion. We step back. We're like, okay, this looks provocative on the surface. I'm not sure what question this artist is inviting me into. This thing, the very first image looks like Jesus on the cross, but maybe George Floyd. That seems a little blasphemous to me, but I'm going to hold my reaction in check. I'm going to do further research. So looked up the Instagram account, and the author has a public comment about the art piece, inviting us to try to understand his point of view. Okay, so the name of this series is called Urban Stations of the Cross, and hopefully you can see this. So the art is a direct response to the George Floyd incident that took place nearly a year ago, when a police officer, Derek Chauvin, decided to take George's life through force and brutality. George Floyd, a man of compassion who was on a path to turn his life around for the better, was then taken away. The actions committed show on video were unnecessary. He was treated harshly due to George's profile. In retrospects to George Floyd and those who are believers in the Christian faith, Christ was also unjustly tortured, killed by those in authority. So it seems like he's making some comparison of Jesus and George Floyd as being victims, killed by those in authority, and putting George Floyd up here on this crucifix. George and Jesus did great things in the world, which leads me to the question, how much good George would have done if he was alive today? How much more would have been resolved if injustice wasn't primarily sentenced to those of color through racial profiling? And then here's all of his hashtags. So this is a piece of art that went up on April 4th around Easter time, which makes me wonder if it was also for the Easter theme, but it is called Urban Stations of the Cross. So that is the context of what we're talking about here. Just reading through the comments here. So yeah, so that's kind of what's happening. And it is a very provocative thing, but I think that a couple of points worth reflecting on is that, and not to say that these are the only points we ought to reflect on, but I think that from a standpoint of a Christian college, somebody felt like this was artwork worthy to bring to Biola for a special event, for a special student event. And
that I'm sure they paid for.
I would imagine. Yeah. And that they took pictures of it in a positive way and posted it on their public Instagram account. And, that's something that would have required people in authority, some level of authority, whether that was if a club that brought the artist to campus, they would have had to have some kind of faculty advisor. There would have to be some kind of approval for what goes on a public Instagram feed.
Or we would assume so. And I think that can also be part of the problem, is that you may have students who hold a certain position or viewpoint, and then they post these things and they make them available to other students, and that can lead people astray. So my question is, even if there was no, leadership oversight and it was all student run and the students brought all this in, where is the oversight? Where is the leadership to say, no, we don't do this? Or do you just let people do what they want until it becomes a problem in a parent group or on an Instagram page, and then it's brought to your attention?
Yeah. Evelyn, for let me see here. Here we go. Here's the comment I wanted. AAPI is Asian American Pacific Islander. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And so I think that and thank you, Evelyn, for this thoughtful comment, that the Asian American Pacific Islander communities are coming into support with BLM. And I think that, that's certainly evident
Mhm.
in this
And
artwork.
there's a lot of, I feel like, racial tensions between blacks and Asians, especially when you look back at the riots in LA in '92, and the beef between Koreans and blacks and things like that. And so I think some of that is a bit of, support. We don't want to be at odds with one another and things like that. So how can we join in and support this movement? Cool. Support, if you feel like there is something unjust and all of that, I say, do what you do. But as Christians, we don't do that. We ask other questions. As Christians, we make sure that we live our lives according to Scripture. And it's important to teach young people, how do you live your life according to Scripture, so that you don't deify a human.
Well, and that brings us to kind of part of the more troubling aspect of this trend of seeing iconography developed around George Floyd and other people that are, there was a similar situation at a Catholic university a week or so ago, where
and the link to that is in the post, where all the pictures are.
Yeah, where we're seeing more and more of these expressions of what are looked upon as being martyrs, in because of this belief that police brutality is widespread and endemic and systemic and everywhere, that these people are being compared now to Jesus. And the iconography of the thing at the piece at the Catholic University puts George Floyd in the place of Jesus as well. And so, there is this growing expression of these artistic pieces, and it ought to provoke us to what the artist is trying to call our attention to. Is it by putting humans in the place of Jesus, in these very famous kind of artistic expressions? Is that blasphemy? Is that some kind of postmodern artistic expression, and deconstructing who Jesus is? Is it an expression of this idea of separating Jesus from Christ, and that Christ is present everywhere? So there's just a lot of questions that we need to be asking. And I think that there's even questions to talk about on the relationship, the racial tensions between the Asian community and the Black community.
Yeah, I haven't followed, like, I've seen a couple of YouTube streams or YouTube videos and a couple articles about, like, the coming together of the Black and Asian community and things like that, and really working beyond, like, the tensions from '92. But I think you're a lot more gracious than I am.
I'm trying.
She really is. She's a lot more charitable than I am, because my original, my fleshly thought was, this is BS. Like, I'm sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. Call me a sinner if you want. I can acknowledge that. But that's not okay. Like, I
do think it's blasphemous. I'm just trying to help people kind of think about what questions we could ask.
Yes, and I think we should be asking those questions.
That's the heart of the teacher in me.
I think that we should be asking the questions. Well, what percentage of young people are deconstructing regularly, are leaving the Christian faith, and how are we preventing that from happening? Or are we participating in that by offering confusing messages to young people?
Well, I think that for me is a big concern, because I think that this does, I'm just wondering, like, if I was an 18, 19, 20-year-old and I go to this art display, what is it that my school is wanting me to understand?
Mm-hmm.
And even if this was purely a student club and student led and student invited, and there was no faculty advisor, there was no paid staff who had knowledge of it, there is paid staff that oversees these affinity groups. And you can go look on LinkedIn for that person. She's got it right in her LinkedIn bio that's what she does. And I think my question is it is a level of endorsement by the school.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the culture that seems to keep happening at Biola. And then, things are silently removed or taken down or whatever. But the question is how are the students being discipled?
Mm-hmm.
If this is the consistent pattern of things that we just accidentally discover that are in the public, and then they're silently removed, they're
Mm-hmm.
scrubbed, they're taken down. And it's like, yeah, but you have to ask some questions of who are the adults in charge that let this happen in the first place.
I want to show this comment really quick before it goes away. Okay, so Evelyn says, I think that people are not saying that George Floyd is Jesus, but showing that Jesus loved George. So I would say to go and read the article that I posted in the previous post about, like, with all the pictures, the still pictures on it, because that artist does say this is George Floyd. The artist is very clear in saying this is George Floyd. I think that there are several ways that we can depict Christ loving someone and not have to put George Floyd or a George-like figure on a cross. The cross is meant for one and only. And, if this is the idea that we want to show that Christ loved George, well, we need to have other, like Krista said, other talks about on discipleship, on what do we put on a cross? Who do we put on a cross?
I think that's just highly confusing. And I think, Evelyn, that's a very charitable interpretation. I would question whether that's consistent with the artist's comments on what he wants us to get from that.
Yeah.
I think the artist is inviting us to reflect on George Floyd as being a martyr equivalent to or similar to or parallel to Jesus. I think that your reading is interesting and charitable, but I'm not 100% convinced that it's consistent with what the artist wants us to reflect on.
And the artist reflection is also, I think, on those still pictures too, Evelyn.
And I would, I think, Evelyn, I love it that you're always in the conversation. You're always asking such great questions. I would disagree with you.
We do love Evelyn.
Yeah, no, we do. It's absolutely sincere. I would respectfully disagree with you that art is up to interpretation. I think that any good art is, the meaning comes from the author. And just as I read a book, just as you want me to read your comment, with having a certain meaning. You were trying to get a certain point across in your comment. I am not free to read my own meaning into your comment. When we read books, when we engage with art, we always want to be thinking about what does the artist invite us into. Now, it is a very postmodern perspective, I will grant you, to say that all art is up to the interpreter. That's a very postmodern point of view, but that's not the historical, classical, or I would even argue respectfully, the rational point of view, because even your comment, you want me to understand something. You want me to understand what you mean. So I think that we have to put the artist's point of view forward first and give that first consideration. Now, I like our friend Joe Miller's comment, and Joe Miller is on our academic advisory council. And this was a thought that I had as well, Joe, is that this is very much in line with James Cone and liberation theology, which I know something you've been reading a lot of in your theology class that you're taking right now. Each person who dies is a person who dies for our sins. That was my first thought too. So it's nice to hear you say that. Is I'm wondering if the artist in some way has been shaped by liberation theology, and that is where he's coming from. And so I think I thank you for that comment, Joe. That's very helpful.
Kimberly wants to know, because Joe and I are going to co-lead a class book group together. She wants to know if that kind of thing we may cover in our upcoming book group.
They're going to do, just to clarify, they're doing a book group on the Delgado Stefanich
Critical race
Critical
theory,
race
an
theory.
introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure at this point because the class is specifically on CRT. We have a specific textbook that we're going through. And that textbook doesn't go into Black liberation theology or anything like that. But I do want to run a class on one of James Cone's books.
Yeah.
Because I think people need to understand the importance of the connection between Black liberation theology and critical race theory, just altogether, and Black liberation theology and the critical social justice theories, like all of them kind of tied together. Black liberation theology was first. It came first. And Cone held a lot of these views. And the things that we're seeing threaded out in things like critical race theory do have direct ties back to some of the Black liberation movements.
This is a great and important comment too. I don't feel like this artistic view, but he or she had the freedom to post this anywhere. 100% agree. People can post, they can create art. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to spend money on it. My concern is the concern I think that you share, Jane, is that this was put forward at a Christian university.
Yes.
That's the issue is, and how do we think about that?
Yeah, I think I tend to say culture is gonna cult, and I'm not saying that this person is in a cult or anything like that, but I feel like culture is gonna do what culture does. I think even in gosh, I don't remember the verse now, but Paul says like he has no jurisdiction over culture. But when we look at what's happening within the church, how are we raising up Christians? How are we raising up the next generation? Because at this point, in my personal opinion, there is a false religion being created through the social justice movement, and it's siphoning off young people. Young people are deconstructing. When you enter into that social justice realm, it's only a matter of time that you end up going down a trajectory that, in my personal opinion, leads to deconstruction.
And so if we are thinking about this happening in the context of a Christian university, as other things we have highlighted that have happened at Biola, you have to take this, and start to ask yourself, how are these students being discipled? How are they being instructed on what the Christian life should look like and how their minds ought to interpret the world around them? What does it mean to have a Christian worldview? I think that is an important question to ask as parents when we're thinking about this, because then there's a very, I think, difficult issue there of if I'm going to pay $30,000 of my hard-earned dollars for my child to go to a Christian university, but this is how the school is going to disciple them, should I be surprised when they deconstruct?
Yeah. And, I think another good question to ask is, who are the professors that are discipling your kids? Who are the people in the residence life areas who are discipling your kids? Like all this can't just be a secret, like, oh, I'm just going to send my kid here and not really know the positions of the people. And there's an expectation almost that, well, you just give us your kid. And because we have on our website that we're a historic Christian university, well, you can trust that. Well, obviously you can't.
Yeah. But this is very common for Christian universities to kind of use that cover story of, look at our doctrinal statement. We're historically conservative. Yeah, but these things are happening in the residence culture. Mm-hmm. And that is what is so difficult to uncover at times. Kimberly, what is so frustrating is that so many traditions lines are being crossed. Only Jesus belongs on the cross. I think that's a very important point. And that's why I do think this is blasphemy. When you push back and claim lines are being crossed, you're labeled unloving and legalistic. And that is also true, because it's always the conservative position who's the one who is seen as unloving, legalistic, and is supposed to back off. But we're trying to call attention to a very real concern. And when we do that, we're immediately told there's nothing to see here. Look at our conservative bona fides. I'm just going to put Joe Miller's comment up here and read it, and we're going to leave it right there. Where are the faculty, the apologists at Biola? Why are they not speaking up?
I had a conversation with somebody today, and they weren't aware of it. Who's on staff at Biola? And so I don't know if that's because the display just went up today. I'm not exactly sure. But, I think that
It was last night.
Gosh, I'm really trying to be discreet in my comments. I think that there are people at Biola who do speak up and speak out against this, especially in the theology department. And yet I think that those voices are a minority. I also think that people need their jobs. And so you come into conflict.
People have spoken up. The issue is that at this point, these decisions are being made at the highest levels, and it is fairly intentional.
I definitely think that it's intentional.
Kimberly asked, do you know if staff are required to sign that they agree with the school's statement of faith? Yes, they are. Every staff member at Biola is, but the issue is that they don't have a position statement on justice or race. So you can believe a lot of different things and you're not violating the statement of faith. Michael says, as a Biola alumnus, I'm grieved and my wallet will be closed. And sometimes that's the best way. You have to look at it. All right, let's go back to Evelyn's comments here. I really value your points and questions. I'm not sure if you two are aware that there is no discussion happening in the AAPI communities to help pass the historical cases of racism.
But then she says down below, it appears to me that the AAPI follows BLM and CRT to help frame and heal from the past.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it, is that it is to help heal some of the things of 92 and just the leftover ramifications of the riots and all of that. And so I think that there is a concerted effort from the Asian American community to really show support for the Black community and for the the things that are being stated as being unjust.
Yeah. So Michael says that staff usually have no power unless they're on a tenure track. Yeah. Even the tenured profs don't have power.
Yes.
We know that firsthand. Even tenured profs do not have power.
We have had several conversations with tenured staff.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
Tenured faculty, yeah.
Yeah. Tenured faculty, but it's frustrating and it's really disheartening to know that even in a conservative university like Biola, we're seeing splits.
Yeah. And, people, I guess what I want people to know is that if you think this isn't in your Christian college, your kid's Christian college, your Christian college where you graduated from, I'm going to politely tell you you're deluding yourself. It's everywhere. It's just go back and watch our show on DEI, and they're not going to put on their website, we're advancing critical race theory. They're not going to do that. They're going to stand behind their statement of faith. But if they don't have a statement, disavowing critical race theory, or at least explaining their position to it, they're using diversity, equity, and inclusion principles, which are basically just the practical outworkings of critical race theory.
Yeah. I agree with Michael's comment where he says, I am grieved. And I think we showed that. I'm not sure, but he says, as a Biola alumnus, I am grieved and my wallet is closed.
Yeah, we showed that.
And I agree. I think we should be grieved because we, people in leadership, are offering students confusing messages. To me, it's a misrepresentation of scripture. It's a misdefinition of who are the oppressed, who are the marginalized, what is a biblical definition of compassion. And then we expect young people without proper discipleship to make these huge decisions on where they're going to stand. And at the age that they're at, there's a lot of social dynamics that come into play in their brain. And so how am I going to stand so that I am also accepted? We're putting, we're in some ways, and I know this is going to be rough, but I kind of feel like we're pitting young people actually against the Christian worldview to some degree. Yeah. And then now they have to make a choice.
And if they aren't really informed about their worldview, to me, it's perfectly understandable why so many of our young people are getting caught up in these secular version of social justice and critical race theory. That's a perfectly reasonable response because we aren't having enough conversations in our churches about biblical justice.
Yes.
We are not properly defining our terms biblically.
Yes.
And so this kind of false gospel comes in,
and it looks hopeful.
It looks hopeful. It offers steps of what you can do. It creates tells a story of reality where you can be involved and do something meaningful for change. And it borrows just enough words from Christianity, like justice and love and that sort of a thing, that it's no wonder to me it gets conflated together. But a big part of the problem is that our churches are not having well-defined, rigorous, detailed discussions about justice from a solidly biblical point of view. So the counterfeit comes along, people don't know the difference. And you cannot expect an 18, 19-year-old to decipher the difference between secular social justice and biblical justice if they've never been taught the difference.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. And I feel like there are many pastors too, though, who, kind of want to be in the like.
Yeah.
And the message of the gospel is not one where, you don't always be liked.
Yeah.
But we do have a standard by which we live by. And that is the standard that we must disciple people into. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Evelyn says, yes, there is. I see it. And I did support it. Meaning,
API.
Critical race theory and that sort of thing. But as I listen to you both, I have to reconsider my position now. And Evelyn, I just commend your courage, your willingness to stay in the discussion with us. Like, you could have written us off a long time ago.
Me and Evelyn had a conversation one day when I was sitting outside the hair shop. It was like an hour and a half long. Yeah.
I just want to just keep inviting you to stay connected with us and stay in the conversation.
Yeah.
We learn from you, and
definitely.
Hopefully you're learning from us, and we're helping each other get closer to scripture. My daughter's debate teacher has his master's in social justice and CRT. And he's at a Catholic school. Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like I would say for many people, I'm not going to put this across the board, but it's not like you go and you get a master's in social justice and critical race theory just to say, now I'm never going to use that and I'm going to adopt this and I'm just going to do this. That doesn't happen for many people. For some people, it does. We actually know someone who got her master or her PhD in South Africa in a discipline that she was completely against for many different reasons, but she did it so that she could be educated in the other side and then come in and really speak out against it from their position.
Yeah.
I want to go to Brian's comment.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brian says, I'm a 1996 Wheaton College alumnus. It's at Wheaton.
It is at Wheaton.
It is very, very much. And we were just speaking in West Chicago. Yeah. And we had a ton of people from Wheaton who protested, who were against our speaking there. Yeah.
Yeah, it is at Wheaton. And it is just, it's tough. It's tough out there. Let's see. Here's a APU alumni. I'm shocked that the vaunted arrival of APU would allow for itself to be compromised in this way. Yeah, APU is a little even further down the road, unfortunately. We have someone working on a research project. We'll see what happens with that. But there's just...
Go to Jennifer's comment.
Jennifer. Oh, Jennifer Bytel.
Yeah, I ain't talked to her forever.
Is she still talking to us?
I hope so. We love her. We need to be intentionally grounding our kids with a well-formed Christian worldview, helping them to be theologically literate and grounding them in their identity in Christ. I completely agree. It's not enough to send your kid to Sunday school and then, the rest of the Sunday afternoon through Sunday at 9, no one talks about Jesus. No one grounds them in scripture. No one explains what is the worldview. Catechize your kids. I know for a lot of people that people think that, catechism is about the Catholic tradition and things like that. No, catechize your kids. Look at a prayer book or a catechism and answer some of these questions with them, and allow those questions to take you deeper onto what does it actually mean to be a Christian and to walk this road.
Jana says the small Christian college I attended not far away from Biola has gone full steam ahead with CRT-based ED&I and have cloaked it as Christian love. And that's the banner. They all fly it under. And I think that's what makes it so confusing to young people, is the messaging is, this is how you love your neighbor.
Yes.
This is how you do it. And that's what I mean when I say they're being discipled into this.
Because love is being presented as the gospel. But people, the gospel is not love. Love is law. Some of y'all gonna get confused and y'all gonna be writing in, and that's okay. Love is law. The gospel is about the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. So when we conflate those things and we say we want to be gospel centered, and gospel centered is love, and then we offer some skewed definition of what love is, everything just gonna get all flipped out and turned upside down.
Yeah. Carol, who is someone from our stomping grounds here in Glendora area, we aren't having enough conversations about the design of the human person either. I find the art here offensive because it puts the created in the place of the creator. Wow, that's a very thoughtful point.
Yes.
Carol. Thank you.
Yes. Joey is asking if we are in our new office. No.
This is the bedroom, bro.
Yes. We can just throw the mess over to the side. That will happen on January 1st. Yes.
Yes.
Let me see. Walton's comment. It's especially hard when social justice is juxtaposed against the past failures of the church in regards to racial justice. That's the hook. I don't disagree. But, I think that we need to have other conversations on, yes, this is the past. What happened? What went wrong? What scriptures were presented that upheld slavery? Like, how was Christianity misused to uphold injustice? And what do we do different today? Like, what does the word actually say? But I don't disagree.
Michael has a great comment here, and this is what I keep trying to bring up, is the campus culture is where the issues come up. This stuff comes in through residence life. It comes in often through the leadership degrees, and often the residence life people, those are the degrees they have, is in leadership or psychology. And this is where it comes in. It comes in the residence life, the chapels, the clubs, the affinity groups, and you're absolutely right. And that stuff often is not on the school's website. So it's really hard to vet. So you have to almost turn into this stalker detective person where you're trying to figure out, like, okay, here's what the school wants me to know about them. Here's the public image. Now, how do I get to what's underneath that?
Yeah.
And so go check out our podcast about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The last third of that, Joy gave us some awesome, extremely practical things you could do to research a school to figure out what's really going on. Okay. Great discussion.
Yeah, it really is. Let's see. I think, all right, that you suggest to,
so Jane is asking, what do you suggest to catechize our kids? Go check out the conference we did in July with our friend, Pastor Jeremy Bannister, called Discipleship Begins at Home. And we offer a complete nuts and bolts blueprint and plan to disciple your kids and have Bible reading and help them work on those things. Those recordings are still available through our friends at Women in Apologetics. And
I don't know the name of our book, the little book that we use.
Our family, we use the Anglican Catechism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'll have you thinking. I'm like, I've been a Christian for a long time, but I was progressive. So, that might not always count. But I mean, it really sparks up a lot of good conversation so that you can hear what your kids are thinking. And then you can also reflect on those questions and how do we live these out in our daily lives?
Let's see here. Rebecca, is it wrong to ask specifically about other schools? I went to a Baptist college and I'm very concerned about our culture getting into a school I love. It's probably already there. This is what I keep trying to say. It's probably already there. They're not going to put it right on the front of the website, but it's probably there.
And we haven't done, research on every school across the board. But people write in all the time.
We're just trying to give you guys, by highlighting Biola, which is, again, the school that we know the best. It's the one where we have the most context. We're trying to show you guys how you can do this too for your school of concern. But you will have to do the work and getting those receipts. We can't do every single school. So
yeah, I wish we could.
Yeah.
I wish we could.
Okay. Right. Well, this has been fun. We hope that this has been helpful in just provoking your thinking about these issues. And I want to say too that I think art is hugely important. I think Christians need to participate in art, but we need art that causes us, to reflect deeply on the Creator and our Savior and, who He is and who we are as the creatures. So it's this is not to denigrate art. I have 2 children who are highly, highly artistic. And so, this is not at all to denigrate art.
I wanted to finish.
Okay. We did a show last year with our friend Rachel Shockey, all about a theology of art. If you want to check that out and do a deeper dive into that. So this is not to denigrate art at all. It's just to ask questions about how it helps to disciple and to shape us. So, okay, are we done?
Yeah, it was a quote. I was trying to get through it. But it's on the stream. It's a C.S. Lewis quote.
Okay.
Let's see what it says. Oh, I don't know how to really get to the rest of it. Okay, so I can't actually show it.
Okay.
But it is from Julius. It's a C.S. Lewis quote. It won't allow me to show it all right here.
It's too long.
Because it's too long of a quote. But I would say, find the quote on the stream and read it because it is a C.S. Lewis quote. And gosh, it says, I can read it here. By the way, the point is of great practical consequence. The most dangerous thing you can do is take any one impulse of your own nature and set it up as the thing you ought to follow at all costs. There is not one of them which will not make us into devils if we set it up as an absolute guide. You might think love of humanity in general was safe, but it is not. If you leave out justice, you will find yourself breaking agreements and faking evidence in trials for the sake of humanity and become in the end a cruel and treacherous man. That's a very provocative comment. The one that I was gonna say by C.S. Lewis is you'd have to Google it, C.S. Lewis's First Things comment, and basically it just talks about when you put the first thing first, which is God, when you put the first thing first, you'll get all of the second things. But when you remove the first thing from its first place and put that second thing there, which would be justice or humanity or love or whatever, you're going to end up losing both the first and the second thing. And, I think that this is what's happening in a lot of places, is that we've removed God from a lot of places and we've put up the idol of social justice. And in doing that, we are actually losing, what should be our first thing.
Definitely. I just want to make a comment from Carolyn. She says, my son is attending Maranatha Baptist University in Watertown, Wisconsin, is standing against wokeness. Also College of the Ozarks in Missouri. I don't know anything about those colleges, but I'm going to tell you this. We get these kind of comments all the time where people are like, oh, it's not at this school. It's not at this school. And I'm like, I can't publicly comment, but I know for a fact it's at that school. Now, I don't know anything about these 2 schools, but I'm going to tell you, people comment on our posts all the time when we talk about this topic. And they say, well, I know it's not at this school. I know it's not at.
And they write back in.
And then I'm like, I know for a fact it's at that school. And then I have to go in there and hide the comment because I don't want other people to be deceived by that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, it's probably with 95% certainty at your kids' Christian college and at the college you graduated from.
Especially if the Christian college is a part of the
CCCU.
CCCU.
Yeah.
Because the CCCU, the Christian College Christian College
Coalition
or something like that. The Coalition for Christian Colleges and Universities, that's what it is, CCCU. They actually have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer that provides a lot of this information. And so, at least the last time I checked their website, they did, and they were pushing literature from critical race theorists.
Yeah.
And so, I would say, if your school isn't a part of the CCCU, there's a better chance that they aren't going down that trail. But if they are a part of the CCCU, or they have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, or things like that, people within the school might be pushing back, but the overall structure might be impacted to a degree.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Thanks for watching and hanging out with us for a few minutes. And we hope you found this video helpful and thought-provoking. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow on the family meeting, the real family meeting, not the emergency family meeting. Bye.